Now, with so many different ways to monitor your exposure when you're on set, it can be difficult sometimes to figure out which method is right for you. Well, in today's video, I'm going to talk about some of the more common exposure tools, and I'm going to show you how to use them. Now in this tutorial, I'm going to be talking about 4 particular exposure tools, including Zebra, Histogram, Waveform, and False Color. Depending on the type of shooter you are, you might favor one tool over the other, or you might find yourself using a combination of these tools at the same time. The key takeaway here is that there's not one best exposure tool. Really, what's best is what works for you. Okay, first up on the list is Zebra. Now, this is a feature that allows you to avoid overexposing your image. As the name implies, this is an overlay of diagonal lines that's going to show up anytime you exceed a specified exposure value. This is a really common feature. You'll find it in most cameras, even consumer level ones. But not all brands and models have the same range of Zebra. For example, the camera I'm shooting on here, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K, goes from 75% to 100%, whereas my Blackmagic Video Assist external monitor goes all the way down to 40%. Now to quickly oversimplify things here, when I'm talking about percentages, I'm talking about the percentage of luminance going from 0 to 100. When you get to 100%, you're going to lose detail because things are too bright. When you're down at 0%, you're going to lose detail because things are just too dark. So when would you want to use this? Well, let's say I'm shooting outside and I want to expose for the sky. So I want to make sure that my sky doesn't overexpose so I don't lose any detail. Now in most cases when you're shooting and you have a sky in your shot, that's generally the brightest thing that you have on screen. So if I set my Zebra to something like 95%, I can basically expose until those zebra lines show up and then just pull it back a stop or two until the zebra lines disappear. Then I know that those skies will be resting somewhere between 90 to 95%. And that's not only going to keep the detail in the shot, but it's going to give me a little bit of a buffer zone before 100% where all that information is going to clip out. If you want, you could stop down even further, but then you need to worry about underexposing other parts of your image. This tool is also great for exposing skin tones. Now when shooting with my Blackmagic camera here, I can bring the zebra level all the way down to 75% and then expose my face to where the zebras just start to show up and then pull it down just a little bit, and then I know that my face will be properly exposed. Next up is the histogram. Histogram is really a great tool to have like a bird's eye view of your exposure. So this powerful monitoring tool is really a graph of the tonal distribution of the pixels of your clip. At the left is 0% and at the right is 100%. And as you go from left to right, you're going to have your shadows, your midtones, and your highlights. While the horizontal axis is distributing that tonal range, your vertical axis is showing you how many pixels exist at each particular luminance level. This allows you to quickly tell if things are over or underexposed, as well as how the contrast looks. So if all of your data or your pixels are showing up on the graph bunched up together, that means that you have probably a low contrast image. You're going to have more contrast if that's spread out along the histogram. To avoid under or overexposing your image, just keep track of those two sides and make sure that there's no hard lines on either the 0 or the 100% mark. Now when I see a waveform monitor, I think of the old school broadcast world. So years ago I worked for a small television station, and our engineers at that television station used waveform monitors to calibrate our exposure levels of our cameras, specifically on multi-camera shoots. So waveform shows the luminance values of the video signal vertically from 0 to 100. Unlike the histogram, the pixels are located in the same horizontal position as in your original image. As you can see, when I move this light across the screen, the waveform responds. Now very much like the histogram, if the image has more contrast, the signal is going to be spread out along the scope. Now, if you're new to using a waveform, they can be a little bit difficult to read. They're especially difficult when attempting to isolate specific elements on screen. For example, if you're shooting someone and you're exposing for their face and you have objects in the background just behind their head that are at the same brightness levels, that's all going to blend together on your waveform scope. This can make it really difficult if you're just eyeballing it and you're trying to isolate elements on screen. That's why if you're using a waveform, it's really good to use something like a gray card to properly calibrate your exposure. And as you know, if you're doing like lone wolf style run and gun type shooting, you might not have the chance to put out a chart and properly calibrate it on a waveform in between every scene or setup. However, if you want to get more specific, you'll want to check out False Color. With False Color, you can get exposure readings of everything within the frame quickly and easily. This tool allows users to monitor exposure levels via specific color values. False color is one of the more popular options for controlling exposure, and because, as I just mentioned earlier, it's much easier to isolate specific elements on screen. For example, nailing skin tone is very simple with false color when compared to using Zebra or a histogram. This chart here from Blackmagic shows that pink is optimal for lighter skin tones while green is best for darker skin tones. To keep this look consistent from shot to shot, I can simply adjust my lights and/or camera settings until the skin changes to the necessary color. Trying to get this same exposure reading with any of the above tools would prove to be much more difficult. One downside is that the predator vision of the false color overlay can be a bit distracting. So what I do is assign false color to one of my profile options so I can quickly toggle false color on and off. Now, if you're in the market for a new camera, be sure to check out all the options because not all cameras come with false color. Okay, so there you have it. Those are 4 different tools you can use to help monitor your exposure when you're out in the field or when you're on set. Let me know down in the comments section what is your favorite tool that you use. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please hit that thumbs up button. And if you want to see more cool content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell.